Hello, everyone, and welcome to vBrownBag, the weekly IT learning video podcast where we bring you experts in the wide world of technology to talk about your favorite topics, a show and tell for tech geeks. Tonight's presentation is AI security, responsible AI, with data scientist, AI realist, and responsible AI entrepreneur, Ayodele Odubela. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am definitely excited to dig in tonight.
Ah, awesome, awesome. And with that, we will just get some little housekeeping elements out the way. If you'd like to contact Ayodele, she's available on Twitter. And of course, made a little mistake there. We'll fix that. All right. And then, of course, there's my Twitter handle. I am the only host tonight. My other counterparts are off and about trekking around the world, and I get the opportunity to present today. So I will be looking at the chat just in case anybody is sending any messages or has any questions, and we will be as diligent about that as possible. All right. And with that, we will stop that. And now, Adele, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. How about yourself, Roger?
I'm doing really good. I've been excited about this, right? So,
Yes.
I will tell everybody why I'm actually excited about this, right? I first saw a video of Ideli doing her presentation on responsible AI on LinkedIn Learning, and saw the video, loved it, right? And I think I wrote a even little review about it too, right? And
I don't
I
even
was
think
like,
I read the review.
what? Stop! Come
Hold on.
on!
No. I'm going to go check it out after this.
I think you should. Yes, you have to, right?
I love it.
So I was like, it would be really fun to have, a conversation with you about AI security, specifically around responsible AI. And you were supposed to present a couple of weeks back, right?
Yeah.
And you weren't able to.
Yep.
And Chris
Redemption.
managed redemption. I'm going to get her on the show for you, Roger. And I was like,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
okay. So we are here. Tell us about you, because remember,
Yeah.
this show is about you now, right?
I'll take it for a second. So,
Yes.
I, believe it or not, started my career in marketing, and my role got a little bit more technical and a little out of depth for me. So I ended up going back to school for my master's in data science. It was really hypey at the time. I started in 2016, and I went through this whole program with a single ethics course under my belt and kind of thought I was ready for the world, ready to take on any job.
Mhm.
And luckily, I got a student scholarship to go to the Data for Black Lives conference. This was the first time I was exposed to the wide scale data issues and biases with healthcare algorithms and climate algorithms. Like it was kind of like seeing the floodgates open for the first time and being like, wait, y'all just train me to be an engineer and not really think about these things.
Right.
So since then, that's kind of been a huge aspect of my career and a huge aspect of what I brought to the table as a data scientist who is hands-on, but also thinking really or trying to think really critically about the types of tools I was building, trying to evaluate from a perspective that wasn't just does this work on a technical level, but also are we doing the right thing? Does this serve people who kind of wields the power here? And are there any issues around that? So that
Right.
led to a really amazing experience at Microsoft Research, where I was really kind of the converter between really amazing PhD level research work and what everybody on product teams wanted to know. It wasn't, unfortunately, common that they're scouring through a 26-page paper and really understanding some of the terms in there. But I would try to build that out into learning curriculums around our Fairlearn package or case studies that really exemplified why we should even care about
Mhm.
responsible AI. And so the last about year and a half, I've really been focused on AI auditing. Just launched a new course for you to check out on auditing AI systems, but really being focused on how can we even check if they're biased? Can we check if they're compliant with our regulations? And that's where we are right now. So kind of an interesting path to get here for me.
That is awesome. That is really good. And so, and right now, you're what are you doing now? Though are you actually doing AI auditing now?
Yeah, so a little bit of AI auditing and policy influencing. So,
Mm,
and I don't mean influencing like Twitter influencing, but being able to advise on AI policy, because we are at this phase where it's really important. And I think if we can get, of course, with all of the hearings, there's all of these kinds of advisories for informing Congress and the White House about the types of AI regulation we need. Some really critical work there, and then a lot of data governance work. So really helping organizations kind of go from 0 to 1 before they even get to start thinking about AI as having their data be a little cleaner and a bit more in order.
wow,
Yeah,
that sounds amazing. So I'm
yeah.
gonna get right into it because
Mhm.
I have like 100 questions, right? And I was
Yeah.
hoping to get through all 100. I don't know how many we're gonna get through, but then of course, if anybody sends stuff on the chat, I'm gonna have to pull those in too. But we'll deal with that as we go,
I
right?
tend to speak
So
quickly, so we'll see, maybe.
there we go. So, how do you define AI, responsible AI, and what principles guide your work in ensuring AI systems align with ethical and
Yeah,
societal values?
yeah. I think to me, the way I look at responsible AI is mostly around accountability. And so when companies say that, we tend to be very corporate, like, sure, it's our fault if something happens. But I mean, actually taking or dealing with financial consequences, dealing with more tangible consequences that
Mm-hmm.
we've seen organizations take so far. So, a great example of this. The like AI powered parking like apps that tell you, hey, you can park here at this time. This isn't really new. There have been companies who've been developing this for like over 10 years using basic OCR software, but now that it's in tools like ChatGPT, the question comes up again around who's really responsible. So you're kind of passing the decision making buck off to a tool, but if you actually read your end user license agreements, or if you actually read some of these terms of service, you'd realize you're not really protected if you were to use it for something critical and end up facing consequences like a ticket. So
Right.
I don't necessarily think that that OpenAI should pay for everyone's tickets, but I think we need to be a little bit more stringent with organizations around the outcomes, especially when they're dire. Like there are some healthcare algorithms that have recommended that really sick patients not get like kidney transplants. That's very different than just like a parking ticket. But at
Mm,
the end of the day, it ended up being a fairly black box algorithm that wasn't transparent to the patient with like a life implication. And we don't really hold like the hospitals or the developers accountable. So that's how I imagine responsible AI. It's truly from that the outcomes of whatever tool that you build are more your responsibility than they are your users.
right.
And we don't do that yet.
Well, have you seen those EULAs though? I mean, they're like 20 to 30 pages long. And I can't
They're
remember the
not meant for
last
people to
time
read.
I clicked on one, right?
Yeah.
Or should I say read one fully, which
Yeah.
is really bad in all honesty, it's really bad, right?
But I think that they're not really meant for people to read. They use a ton of jargon and legalese. Like there have been efforts about getting even online, just basic internet companies like Facebook to make
Mhm.
them readable and digestible for the average person who doesn't have a law degree, who isn't ready to sit and spend. I think they inspected different organizations' terms of service and how
Yeah.
long it would take. And no one's going to read for 70 hours. Um, so even the way we kind of design our protections, um, big tech is a long way to go to getting to a level of both transparency and accountability.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
I have a question from the audience. Graham, you're stopping me
Yes.
from going to questions, man. I got 99 more to go. Come on, dude. But
Mine comes, but audience engagement is not one.
So Graham is asking, how do you define AI and
Mhm.
where is the line between AI and ML?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Mm, right.
So I think there's what's common is how we've discussed it now, and there's what I truly believe. I don't believe that any of the tools like ChatGPT are truly AI. And even then, I'll define AI as essentially an automated process for achieving a task. Um, I don't make a lot of comparisons to like human abilities,
Mm,
but I think the real AI to me, I consider a little bit more similarly to robotics and to reinforcement systems rather than generative systems or most ML that's like supervised or even unsupervised learning. I think about AI more as an agent that's learning from aspects of an environment. So more along the lines of, I would say, very highly advanced reinforcement learning.
mm,
Granted, that's not what we call AI today.
no.
And that's not, and I think as we've kind of gotten buzzier and buzzier, there's always been something else. It's been, okay, we're at ML. That, well, there's AI. Okay, we're at AI. Well, generative AI, while the subtype is kind of that novel, bleeding edge almost. So
Mm,
the common definition right now is that AI is like certain automated system that uses, I mean, unfortunately, part of the problem is we don't have really an industry standard definition. We have kind of what we've extrapolated as technical folks or like colloquial understandings of like
mm,
Terminator, which in
right.
which therein kind of lies part of the problem in that.
Oh, don't go there. Don't go there. I
I
have a
won't go
question.
there
I have a
because
question on that. I have a
I'll
question
pull
on
back.
that.
I'll pull back. I'll let you ask.
But I mean, yes, for human interpretability, doing things that a human can do, right? That's pretty much some of the, in layman's terms, what everyone considers AI, right? But what I found is that everybody is incorporating everything as AI now, right? So you've got generative AI, but it's almost like generative AI now is all of AI, which it's really not.
Yes.
You've got conversational AI, you've got AI for other things, but everyone is just lumping it all up into one. So, what do you say to those individuals that are just, hey, AI and everything?
This is going a little bit also off of Graham's comment. It is marketing. AI as a term is really
Graham,
it's really more about marketing because and I think I'm very critical around this because that was kind of my OG background in that
right?
the way people respond to using AI when we in comparison to even say data science, people are willing to put money into it and part of the reason is there's been hype around AI for decades, but also the fact that they don't truly understand it is part of the reason we see some of these massive overinvestments and then usually disappointments at the lack of ROI or this was way too much of an investment and it didn't pan out in the ways that they expected, not even necessarily all ROI based, but having negative incomes and having oh, you're now in this AI incident database and having these news articles or getting fined by the FTC. Like, there are many reasons why folks really focus on AI, and generative AI is kind of one, the mass popularity has put it at the forefront of people's minds, and we forget like there are very basic computer vision systems. There are very basic, like logistic regression is something that people are like, is that generative AI? And I think the lore that we've created about, oh, you need to be a PhD or you need to be so educated to understand this doesn't help. And I think makes people feel more, oh, well, I'm never going to get this. So it's all that chat GPT stuff, right?
Yeah, right. The learning curve is, according to what they feel, is it's too much. It's going to be too great for them to be able to catch up,
Yeah,
right? You know.
yeah.
So, but I mean, there are a lot of great tools out there. Not for nothing, there are a lot of great tools out there. Midjourney, DALL-E, you know, tools that pretty much anybody can use, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's really great. But the question becomes, are they actually using it with best practices in mind, best security in
Hmm.
mind? And, you know, and again, that's where you come in, right? You know, so,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
when it comes to that, then, how do you, I guess, what strategies do you employ to strike a balance between the innovation and, you know, again,
Mm.
making sure you keep in mind those ethical standards
Yeah.
and security context? How do you manage that, right?
Yeah. I think this kind of goes back a little bit to your first question that I didn't unfortunately get to. Sorry, is that
Mhm.
I definitely, on a personal level and a professional level, believe there are certain core beliefs around how we use AI. The first and foremost, which is really difficult,
Mhm.
I tend to prioritize the most marginalized people in whatever context or scenario we're looking at. So, if we are looking at mortgage loans in the United States, we know that we are extremely biased in a lot of mortgage lending towards certain
Right.
races, towards certain income classes. We are biased towards Native English speakers, American born citizens. Like, we have all of these unfortunately embedded in our systems. My ethos is in any scenario, if you are able to prioritize for and remove the or mitigate some of the harms that happen to the most marginalized, everyone else will only benefit. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, the way we've built things now is not a mindset towards those who have already been harmed or who have been historically marginalized. But what is the target audience? Is this going to increase profits? And that I think is at the core of what seems to be this kind of struggle between innovation and doing the right thing or
Right.
responsible development. And truth be told, I think that the best push that we'll see towards innovation, most people are not going to like it when I say this, is going to be regulation around how we use AI and is going to
Oh,
be forced transparency. Why?
mhm.
Like a kid in a candy store, companies cannot regulate themselves. And often they don't face the consequences for when their tools don't live up to the expectations and their marketing. This has happened with almost every big tech company. Our tool can do this, AI tool can do this. And it turns out in testing and evaluation, it can't or it can't do it consistently at the level you promise.
Right.
And we have like no type of recourse for this. We have no way of, and unfortunately, it's a big deal when these are tools that law enforcement agencies across the country use. These are tools that are used by the TSA. These are tools that, for some, the biometrics like facial recognition helps you get through airport security faster. And for others, you will be delayed by these tools.
All right.
So when we think of the context of how quickly we've adopted the AI and how unfortunately hasty we did so, I think is one of the biggest reasons we have security issues. Is we were like, well, there's market pressure, or the competition is doing it, or we feel the need to do this now so that we don't truly look at the ethical problems. And
No
another
problem.
piece that is not often mentioned is we don't look at the security issues. Like for
Hmm.
people who are boarding planes, you can miss a flight and it can cost you personally thousands of dollars because of a tool that you can't say, hey, you cost me my flight, you have to pay me. They're like, well,
We're
like
just
we
doing our
can't.
jobs.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just doing our jobs. But if
Hmm.
you went to the company and said your tool is biased, they'd say, well, the airport decided to use it. And people end up in this loop of not being able to find accountability or remediations for things that
Hmm.
they're actively harmed by.
controversial comment by you. The government will
Mhm.
have to regulate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And accountability. I mean,
Hmm.
those are two critical things. But I think from the accountability standpoint, it is
Yeah.
hard to hold someone accountable for something, or a company
Hmm.
is accountable for it, and it can cost you a lot just to try and remediate or get remediation from that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Graham actually has another question,
Ooh, I
right?
love this.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about holding AI companies accountable. That's why I actually, pause for this one. Holding
Mhm.
AI companies accountable for their algorithms, but are we holding humans to that standard,
Mhm.
and should we hold
Mm.
AI to
I
the
love this
higher
question.
level of accountability?
Yeah,
Right.
I love this
Mm.
question. So I think first, for humans, maybe, and sometimes. So, depending on what you do, if you are, let's say, if you're licensed in a thing, pharmacist, therapist, doctor, you are held accountable for your actions.
Hmm.
If you have a misdiagnosis or if you leave medical tools in someone, you are held accountable. Granted, lots of things fall through the cracks. We hear horror stories, however, but there is a licensure process, there is an insurance process, and that's by no means the only professional industry. But we look at car accidents. Individuals are held accountable for how they drive. And the laws that we have globally hold us accountable to certain things. If you are going to commit a crime, ideally, and I'm not pretending by any stretch of the imagination these systems are perfect, but we
Hmm.
do have things that hold humans accountable for certain actions, whether that's professionally, whether that's personally. I think the question of do we hold AI to a higher standard? Yes. The first reason is because we have extracted the value out of this planet, out of the data that exists, out of my Fitbit data or my Apple Watch data. Apple has extracted for profit. And not only do I mean biometric data, social media data, this data broker, data for sale, selling our data has been a thing for over a decade. They
Hmm.
profit directly. So their tools need to be held to the same things at the bare minimum as we are. So if we're talking AI therapists, therapists have licenses, they have boards that they're accounted to. And when they break certain oaths, they are removed from their boards and they're unable to practice. We don't do that with AI tools. We let them go rogue. We say,
Ooh.
ooh, take it off of Twitter, and that's it. And
Mm.
not only have we extracted value out of humans to train this, companies put money in as far as resources for developers, for research, and then they have the expectation to make profit from these tools. And I think that is at the core is that ChatGPT, while it started off free, we all knew a freemium tier or we all knew paid products were coming, but they also have trained off of our engagement with it. So if it's going to be about making money, then it absolutely has to be accountable because the companies that sell ShotSpotter, that sell tools to hospitals, they are not giving it away for free as a public good. They are profit driven organizations. And I think that is the core in that could we have a nonprofit that develops AI that maybe wouldn't have to be at higher standards? Maybe sure, but like there's no way anyone's investing in something that doesn't make money. Um,
Right.
so if we're looking
Mhm.
at, and the last aspect of this too, I think, is around scale and power go hand in hand. So one of the reasons AI is amazing and is taken off is because we can make millions of decisions at scale. But the power that gives us over basically every group of people is far different. If you are a defense attorney and you are horrible at your job one day and someone gets locked up, that is one person, and you have a finite life. You have a finite amount of people you can F up on. AI doesn't. Like, once your biometric data, especially even as an example, is taken, who's getting plastic surgery to pass a facial recognition? And the thought of that is almost so wild.
Yeah.
So the amount at which AI scales is the reason the accountability level should be so high. I think it's a third of Americans are in a facial recognition database that most don't know about and that is used by law enforcement agencies across the country.
Right.
None of us consented to that. And the database essentially was built by, and unfortunately, if we think about how our government works, it's often some big contractor said, hey, I'm going to bid on this thing. I'm going to build you this tool. I'm going to take a ton of money. And whatever happens is the government's results, and tend to walk away very easily without having to deal with. We're starting to get public opinion back, and they don't like this tool. You got to make it more ethical. They're like, well, y'all paid that contract. And we tend to have a lot of products like that specifically used around the government. And unfortunately, it gets people locked up. Like, we have false imprisonments based off of misidentifications in AI. Sure, cops can do the same thing, but it's not at the same speed. And I think that's kind of I've never, my understanding or ethos is really, the higher we can scale it, the more accountability you should have and the more transparency you should have.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't generate revenue.
So how then do you ensure that a company is using responsible AI practices and that they're integrating them into their entire AI development lifecycle from design all the way to deployment and beyond?
Mm-hmm. I think a huge part is kind of contrary to what a lot of orgs have done. They've said, we're going to build an ethics council or an ethics board to be our watchdogs and to be our oversight. And I think that's the worst way to approach it, because that often lets products go from idea to production. And then, we got to do this kind of stamp of approval. And then we get to the friction between, we built the thing and we spent and invested this, but it's not meeting ethical standards or internal standards. I think the best thing organizations can do is have their ethics team be embedded. And that means within product teams, that means within business teams, that means on engineering teams. Like, thinking about it, one of my favorite, really long, kind of annoying academic-y sounding words is that responsible AI is a socio-technical endeavor, right? It is going to be social. We have to learn from, let's say you're building an LLM. You need a linguist on your team. You can't pretend that you know that the average engineer knows enough about linguistics or computational linguistics to be effective. You need behavioral scientists or UX researchers on your team, so that when you build something like ChatGPT, you can make it seem less human by not having it have a cursor blink, print out letter by letter. These are all things that typically engineers, it's just around exposure. Like, I took one ethics class in a data science master's. I wasn't exactly ready for facing the types of problems I was facing when I was off at these orgs. So making sure that responsible AI isn't about like one data scientist with this background. It isn't about one policy officer. It's about people who are educated on this throughout the organization, and realizing that sometimes you have to move slower to avoid negative consequences. And that's why I think regulation and fines will push organizations, because often the move slower and truly evaluate this doesn't win unless there is a slap on the hand coming when you don't.
Yeah. I was just thinking to myself, I just recently read a story where a engineer was promoted to like a chief ethics officer at an organization to deploy a AI software. And, I was just thinking to myself, I can imagine he's sitting there, being asked to translate stuff, and he's just got Google Translate out open on his computer screen.
Yeah. Yes. Like, and it's funny because I do often worry about what the state of mostly the internet will be when we start getting this like regurgitation.
Yeah.
I think we're going to need to put some tax on this as far as content, because we're going to unfortunately see more repetitive, less meaningful works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why like ChatGPT is giving, like more and more hallucinations lately, or, giving out wrong information, because it's just got so much data it has to compile or, index, and it's going out there and it's searching so many different areas and on the internet, scouring it for information and then giving you a
Yeah.
response.
It is something I'm concerned about. And I think a big piece of why is that OpenAI hasn't been very transparent about how they train. And so, sure, maybe they know internally, but do you really know, with as many parameters as ChatGPT has, do you really know if you're retraining on something that you have created? One, that you've already trained on. Two, that was created by ChatGPT and it's been nearly a year. It's been out.
Right.
So there are books, there are articles, all of the TikTok ideas of, hey, use ChatGPT to build your blog business. So it's not like these people said, hey, OpenAI, here's a link to my blog. And make sure you don't include it when when you're gathering new data to train ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a high chance of that happening. And I think kind of will my prediction is it'll be a smaller timeline, kind of full circle. So we kind of, with a lot of big tech, with Lyft and Airbnb, we've kind of went from this disrupted the taxi industry to, oh my God, this is more expensive than a taxi. And I think the same thing, Airbnbs that disrupted hotels until they were more expensive than hotels. I think we're going to see a lot of the same. This tool is really innovative and novel now, and then it's going to keep being exposed to data that either it created and maybe people changed two or three words around, but then kind of devolve into okay, maybe this isn't as useful for me anymore. I would not be entirely surprised if that's what we see.
Mm. Wow. Okay. Graham has another question. Given by how development companies have built security into their existing software, should we have any faith that they will be any better with AI software?
Mm.
Mm.
Should we have any faith? I tend to err on the side of no. I think that there's a lot we can do to impact this. I won't say the R word again, but shin. Outside of that, I do think we have to have a better look. One, we have to require transparency from organizations. So when I say that, it's because I recognize that the way they've built in security to existing software has been inefficient, maybe at best, to really, really, really bad. Um, I think often these tools or these security AI, blockchain, because we have a tendency to see this all one big umbrella of tech or software, we tend to end up with the same patterns. And I think we will end up with the same patterns with AI, is that because there's this like race for funding, or this race for gaining market attention, we tend, big tech, and really people who are developing these tools in general, tend to cut corners, tend to race towards a product without really the product market fit, or race towards doing it for doing its sake and not truly grasping the use cases if it's actually beneficial.
Mm.
I don't, and I think this is one of the biggest issues. I don't have faith that they're really doing it any differently with AI tools. And what scares me is that we can make decisions so quickly, and we can make so many of them. And I definitely feel like that is one of the tough things right now to deal with. Is The ability to take the easy route or to move too quickly.
It's interesting. Uh, Being a security practitioner myself, I've seen, from the audit side of the house, I've seen, I've been in meetings where, we're talking about a particular product and we're trying to get that product out the door. And what I've always found is that security was the last person or the last team to know about the particular product. Yes. The developer developed it without security. And then there was this fever of, hey, we all have to put in, security and add security. And then now we have companies that say, hey, we are security first, whenever we design, deploy, do anything. And, you get to AI now, and what I've still found is that their reliance on anything, like even the LLMs or any information that's out there, their reliance is on somebody else to provide the security. It's not on them to be able to do it. So when the organizations start thinking about how they want to, their particular use case, they don't even really think about security first. They just think to themselves, I need to get this product into my organization now, because as you stated before, other companies are starting to embed this technology. I need it in here now. Let's get it in there. Let's get it out the door. Let's figure out what we need to do and put it in. And again, security is stilling, there you go, Grams. Security is always a retrofit, put it in at the end and then tailor it around the organization and then try to squeeze it into that security box. Right?
And ethics or responsible AI is often the same way. And something that I've noticed, I'm sure most other folks have too, is that it seems like it's in every product. I open Canva and I can generate new text. I open Notion and I can generate text. Like, it seems like in almost every tool that I use on a regular basis, there's a generative AI feature to it now. And while that isn't inherently in and of itself bad, it makes me wonder, one, if OpenAI or ChatGPT is eventually just going to evolve into just being an API. Like, that's typically what folks are calling, or there's a couple really big large language models that most companies are using and embedding and maybe tweaking a little bit. But I think it's interesting, though, if that, let's say, for whatever position you have, if you open 10 of your tools and 9 of them have generative AI, one, will you ever feel the need to use ChatGPT directly? 2, will you ever feel maybe for the not so intuitively creative, would you ever feel the need to generate text content from scratch? Like, we haven't really thought about some of the implications of that. And so one of the things I am consistently thinking about just around security, I think that is the scariest thing. What will become of like our state of consumer passwords? What will become our state of leaking information to things like ChatGPT when there are no, at least if you're not in an enterprise that's using a tool, there are no guardrails. You can put in, this is my email and this is my password for everything. Is that something that someone is able to then regenerate with the right prompt or with the right, kind of malicious prompt injection? Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions, which is on the one hand exciting. But if we're talking about like security and people's information or PII, we've seen people from like Samsung put company code into ChatGPT without the thought that this is an issue. And I do think that we need a little bit more of that buffer, and automated tools have allowed us to very easily kind of like turn off our brain, not think about it. We're saying, hey, I'm passing the buck to you to, create this thing, but we don't have a lot of that AI criticism, or the average person typically doesn't critique the answers of any automated tool, even like things like calculators. Like, we think there is zero chance it's wrong. And we know that that's not the case with AI. So I feel like
That's you're talking about it.
We
It's
gotta
giving
build
me the
that.
right answer every time. It's like the internet. The internet is never wrong.
Never wrong.
Never
Never
wrong.
led me astray. Nope.
So Graham would like to know, will you still feel the need to think and be creative and understood? All
Yeah.
right. And
I I think this is kind of our big ethical issue that I think this is the true direction of this existential risk question.
mm,
I don't think it's the Terminator is going to take over physical hardware and going to literally end human life.
you must not have a
I
question
think
about that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't
No,
think
it's good.
our
No, it's good.
printers and all of our IoT connected devices are just going to turn on it. But I do think as far as we've kind of compared automated tools and AI to human ability for a long time. We've for a long time said like these are going to be super intelligent, they're going to surpass what we can do. And if you think about it, we've kind of had a couple decades of propaganda around kind of human uselessness. So if you're the average person, if you're not in tech, if you're not someone who's a developer, you might be thinking, well, what's the point in going into art? What's the point in spending um, hundreds of hours of human time when a tool could just replace me? It could copy my style. I think that's our existential, which I still hate to say, risk in that where will we feel useful in a world that doesn't need us?
Mm,
And I think it's weirdly funny because I'm like, but we created that world. We adopted these tools in a
right.
way that made human ability, human creativity less valuable. And I think kind of what always frustrates me is at the core of that, if we kind of do a little unpacking and we ask why. And this is my kind of, I'm getting on my soapbox for just a second.
It's yours. Go.
Yeah. My issue, my question with a lot of things that we build in AI is why are we building? And often it is around human productivity. What is productivity really?
Mm,
It is truly around can we decrease the cost of this labor and increase profit? We see this in, I mean, this is not a new concept or idea, but I think especially over the past couple of years, where we've seen highly unpredictable markets, we've seen the height and fall of Bitcoin. I think on a kind of larger scale, not company to company, there's this effort towards if I can reduce how much I have to pay people, I'll increase profit. And that's especially helpful with inflation, even on the supply chain side of things.
mm,
But I've not been able to find an answer outside of that, outside of productivity. Why do we need to make AI generated art? Do you want to be an artist? That is a path. It's not maybe, I mean, it's defined in comparison if we're talking to like AI career paths, but there are defined methods of practice, courses, hundreds and thousands and maybe even millions of materials on becoming an artist.
right.
But I've not found a use case of AI that isn't make more money because we spent less up front. And that's, I think, where I struggle in that. I mean, there's not a whole lot of nonprofit AI labs just building public good tools with no potential opportunity to make profit or benefit from it. And I don't know if I would love to hear some alternative use cases.
Oh, wow. You gave me a lot to digest right there. But before I
Yeah.
do, I'm going to state what Graham just stated online.
Yes.
Automation lets you fail at scale. AI now lets you do it with speed, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yes, that's a really good point. And you know, I know you touched on it earlier, so I
Hmm.
might as well just ask it now
Yeah, yeah.
before I can't ask it again, right?
Hmm.
Is AI going to take
Hmm.
over the world? Is Skynet a plausible, I mean, it almost sounds very cartoonish,
Yeah,
to be able
yeah.
to say, oh, yes, well, it's going to take over because no
Hmm.
matter what, anything with AI is what we put in. So,
Yes.
for it to take over, technically we would have to be the one saying, okay, we're going to take over ourselves, right? But I will acquiesce
Yeah,
to your thoughts
yeah.
on this.
I have given this question a lot of thought, and I have not come to a different answer than no. And I've got a couple reasons. One, I think that AI so far is a misnomer in that
Mm,
we have ignored the vast amounts of human work and human labor it takes to build AI, even at the level we have it now. Even with tools like ChatGPT having hundreds of Kenyan moderators be exposed to disgusting internet content was necessary for this tool to exist. Um, and that's necessary in almost every case, whether we're looking at it from a content moderation standpoint to a data creation standpoint. If we got to totally reset, drop OpenAI with all of the money, tools, resources, and education they have now, in 1985, they would never be able to create ChatGPT.
mm,
They wouldn't have the training data. We ignore because the internet allows us to be anonymous and adds levels of abstraction. We've ignored that what it's trained on was millions of hours of human effort, and it was never going to develop without those millions of hours of human effort existing to begin with. The fact that it
mm.
was easily accessible on the internet is part of why these tools get built. But I think the human labor being one side is kind of is the reason I don't think we'll get to a Skynet. And the other side of things is that it still requires human maintenance is all through this process. We have to harvest. We have to acquire water to train these tools. There are literal supply consumption factors. We have to maintain data centers. We have to have people who are training these, and there are servers involved. There's so many physical pieces that we've been able to forget about because we live in a cloud world and because we don't really focus on it. But there are so many physical aspects to actually building these tools that I think that is kind of the human labor involved and the physical servers and data centers and water that must be collected are the real reasons we won't get the brain in a jar that's kind of pushing the buttons in our lives.
When you said harvest, my mind went to the Matrix, where the
No,
humans were
not
being
that kind of
harvested.
harvesting.
It's like,
Not
oh
that kind.
no, right? She predicted it.
Yeah.
We'll go back to responsible AI.
Yeah.
Where do you foresee responsible AI
Mhm.
evolving in the next decade? Since you
Mm.
kind of pivoted to that, and then
Yeah.
and what pivotal role do you believe it will play in shaping the future of technology and security?
That's a good question. That's a good
Yeah.
twofer.
See, oh, we got some
I
doozies
like
coming.
it. You got, I know, right? I was like, oh, we are not even through halfway through this list. um, I think the biggest, I don't want to say prediction. I think responsible AI is going to go through a phase now where we're starting off now, where we are often external teams to product teams. And I think we'll move in a way that we'll learn from these lessons. We'll be like, what could we have done differently? And then I think we'll start to see RAI be embedded throughout different parts of an organization. Um, and it's funny because when I say RAI, I mean people who are technical algorithm assessors. I mean, people who write algorithmic and company policy. So RAI is a very brief way of saying um, probably the boring things, the security, compliance, the data governance things that no one wants to stay up on or do. and and it's funny because REI is kind of that blanket term for that, or is all the boring security, compliance, and legal applied to AI. And the main difference is that there's more technical folks that tend to be involved. But I think we'll start to see it really be accepted through organizations. And I think the driver for that will be regulations, and also some of the financial downsides of just having tools that people are kind of fed up with and are frustrated by. I'm sorry, remind me the second half of your question because I went down the path in my head. I was like, oh, yeah.
Where do you see it playing and shaping the future of technology? Right. Yeah. And security, of course. Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things that we'll see is a lot of the practices will start to overlap and kind of blend within each other. So it's not that I think AI is really that related to security, but I think if we are looking at AI with the right lens, the responsible lens, there's a lot of practices that even right now they're shared between groups. So lots of teams in AI are starting to use red teaming tactics. I think with tech in general, or with software in general, we're going to see a more of a focused effort towards understanding if these tools, one, kind of work as intended, and two, we really start to inspect for things like malicious use. We tend to consider maybe AI as like the forefront for understanding bias and disparate outcomes. But it's not only AI tools that have this happen. Like mortgage lending had issues with this far before AI or machine learning were really used in their industries. So I think we'll start to see, I think it will be a necessary wave of a high of fines, articles, incidents come out, and then we'll start to see some regulations, some organizational changes, and then folks really starting to think of, as weird as it sounds, kind of what I like as a personal philosophy. Sometimes I think of what's the worst case scenario and plan for that. If something happens that's less bad as the worst case, great. But I don't think we've approached things like that so far.
Right. Obviously in technology, you got the bell curve, and a lot of people use that to define how well a technology is going to do, and then of course the decline of that technology. And then of course you got the bubble effect. But then there's sometimes where technology goes down, and then actually comes back and advances again. So different individuals that I've spoken to about our AI have always said, hey, you know what? We're in the first portion of that curve, and everything sounds great. Everything sounds awesome, and then we're slowly on the decline from the hype, but eventually it's going to pick back up again because of the fact, and Graham alluded to this, the speed of it. You can't get away from that. The ability for it to process and collate so much data, right? It's going to be something that you're going to want to use. And of course, profitability. You mentioned this, profitability. It's going to be used, So what do you say to the hype train? Do you feel like right now we're in that situation where it's starting to decline a little bit and customers are starting to go, hey, let's pay a little more attention?
I think we are at the cusp. This is going to sound awful. The cusp of where we needed to be about 6 years ago, because if we look back kind of the history of AI, Google search, believe it or not, is really helpful for this when looking at certain keywords. You start to see things like bias, fairness, and these issues started to really gain popularity around 2014. It didn't really start impacting things like how governments looked at AI and regulation until the last 2 years. And so I kind of see that as the the ethics thing came up and if you're in this like very small group of either researchers or you're very hands-on, you may know about this, but it didn't really get to public knowledge until maybe I'd say 2020, so around 3 years ago.
Right.
And then we've come on the okay, guys, it's bad. We've been saying it's bad for a while. Are we gonna fix it? And we're like, okay, fine, let's fix this thing. We'll make a couple regulations. And so I think we're in that like, oh, customers have started to see some of the, well, we said it was going to be X accurate and it's really not. Um, I think we're in a little bit of that decline
Mhm.
where we kind of have to go back to basics. We'll see regulation be implemented. We'll see AI audits be implemented. And then I think we will start to see in a couple years a bit of this upswing. And I think what's unique about that, I could be wrong. Predicting the future is really hard,
Hey,
but I think,
always.
yeah. um, I think we'll see AI being used in different industries. I
Mm.
think we'll start to see a lot more AI in I can't talk today. Logistics and manufacturing,
Yes.
around robot processes, and it's not that it's not used in these industries now, but that's not what's getting the hype and attention. It's around social media. It's about consumer products. Um, but I think the resurgence will be oddly enough, a lot more based in like sensor systems rather than based in, I can predict if you're angry from this tweet, or I can write you a novel piece of text based off of all of the text I've seen before. I think we'll be a little surprised at the more rational approach to
Mm.
developing AI kind of after we go through this phase.
Well, so then answer me this, right?
Yeah.
Uh, as somebody who's in security and loves security,
Mhm.
and I love going through logs. I mean, it's my favorite thing to do, right?
Ooh.
And we're looking at things, the tools now that can process a ton of more information, look for anomalies, and
Mhm.
find things a lot quicker than us as humans can, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so AI has been portrayed as, hey, it is the silver bullet to security challenges, but do you see that
Mhm.
as a realistic expectation, that implementing AI based security solutions is solving the
Yeah.
problem?
Yeah. I don't. And I think the big reason
Yeah.
for that, I must sound like such a nihilist, but I promise I am very actually enthusiastic and, but I think
Right.
it's not that AI isn't useful. It's the silver bulletiness. It's the you take one tool, one algorithm, one method or theory, and we do the we do the spray and pray. We try it in every single thing in every single use case, regardless of how different they are. And then we're like, okay, we kind of deal with the results and try to consistently figure out why things aren't working. When I think we need one more custom, smaller, industry specific solutions. But even aside from that, security, and I am not the most advanced in my knowledge, but tell me if I'm wrong, but security isn't a one size fits all solution. And there aren't one size fits all solutions typically. Oh no. Oh no, I think I lost him. Oh, he's lost power. This will be I'm sorry, I'll have to just deal with me until Roger gets back. But this might be a good opportunity. Feel free if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and I'll take a second to answer if there was anything you didn't want to ask in front of Roger. And if there are no questions, I'll start singing. And I promise y'all don't want that. You have. Thank you, Graham. Doing it as a one-woman show is just a little harder. Sorry, you'll have to just deal with me until until Roger gets back, but hopefully he gets his computer charged here in just a second. There he is.
Hi, I am sorry. You know what?
No
I,
worries.
I just I just realized something. I've been getting the alerts from Amazon telling me that there's a major storm coming through. So
Oh no.
so
That's real.
I am so sorry.
No worries at
Wow.
all.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what we'll do? I'll ask
Mhm.
you one more question as a close-off
Yeah,
question. And
perfect.
obviously we're gonna have to get you back on the show again. You have to come
I
back. We're gonna
love
have to
it.
chat
We have
again.
to get through all
Right?
of these.
Yeah, listen, I've only gotten through 90, the 10 of the 90 questions. So I still got more. We have a lot more to talk about.
So
Okay.
nine
We
more
got content.
episodes, you're saying? Perfect.
So again, I don't want my power to run out or anything like that, but
Mhm.
just curious, what advice are
Yeah.
you going to offer to organizations that are looking to develop and implement their AI, policies and practices?
Mm. One, I would say don't be afraid of bringing on consultants or SMEs when you don't have the talent to maybe adequately assess or really go through the procurement process with any types of tools. It can be really challenging, and companies tend to overpromise and underdeliver. Be critical, and regardless of how that's perceived, it's really about you, the bottom line, your customers at the end of the day. That and um, consider who may be in your customer pool or like a data subject for your organization, and consider who may be at risk. So, do you work with folks who are in education who are minors under 18? Are you, dealing with protected classes as far as people who are men, women, any type of protected class is one way to look at it, but like areas in which people are marginalized. If you're a global organization, really think about folks who are either English speakers or non-speakers of the main language where you are located or headquartered. Start to think more holistically, and it's okay to be a little woo-woo. It's okay to be a little like fluffy with this work because we didn't do this up front. And how I like to think of it as, we've been building AI tools for decades, and only in the last 10 have we really been concerned about how it's impacting people, long-term societal effects. And now we're playing catch up. We're not starting from zero and saying, hey, let's take our first steps. And like, we've got to catch up.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Ayodele, thank you so much, right,
Thank you for
for
having
joining.
me.
I really can't wait to have another conversation with you. I will definitely hit you with much harder questions next time, though, right?
That's fine. I'm okay.
All right. And thank you to our audience that joined tonight. And with that, we'll end the show. But again, would you hang around for a quick second? All right. And
Yes.
all right. Awesome. Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.